Well, good morning, and here we go. Hi, Frank Sinclair. I'm the Chief Encouragement Officer for Dream Again Business Consulting, and also on the Board of Directors for Another Life Foundation, which sponsors the Black Men's Project. Wanted to welcome each and every one of you. I think we're in for an incredible treat today, as we have a lot of fantastic speakers that are going to come and talk to us about mental health, mental wellness concerns and issues. So we're glad to be with you today. We want to welcome everyone and thank you for attending this event. The Black Men's Project is brought to you, as I said before, by Another Life Foundation. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping those battling with mental illness. As I mentioned before as well, I'm a member of the Board of Directors for Another Life Foundation, and we are glad to put on these series. Today, you're going to hear from several Black male speakers. These speakers will share their inspirational stories, experience, coping skills, working strategies, and encouragement to seek help and resources for achieving mental health and wellness. Hopefully, by the end of this summit, everyone in the attendance will have more awareness of mental health and wellness. And you will hear about the importance of safety and maintaining your mental wellness. Also, if anyone wants a referral for a mental health provider in our network, please feel free to contact Another Life Foundation at anotherlifefoundation.org. Remember, those of you in attendance will be able to participate in conversations once the speaker has finished presenting. We'll have a short time where you can ask questions, interact, find out, ask for clarification, whatever you need to make sure that you're understanding what is being said and talked about here at the summit today. So, with no further ado, Dr. Anthony Young he's on the screen, and I just wanted to make sure, Dr. Young, that I went on and blamed you for this next portion out of the day. Dr. Young is so incredibly qualified that when I try to introduce him, his intro was so long that we didn't have any time to do the rest of the summit. So this is what we're going to do, gentlemen. When I introduce you, you come on, give us a little snapshot of who you are, why, and why this makes a difference, and how it formed a passion inside of you to talk about these particular issues. Is Dedrick Sims on yet?
Yes, here I am, Frank.
There you are. Yeah, you've been here a long time, man. So good seeing you again.
Absolutely, brother. I'm here.
All right. All right. So Dedrick Sims will be kicking us off today and giving us some wisdom and words that are going to help us as we move forward in this journey. You go, Dedrick.
Absolutely. Thank you, Frank. And I apologize up front that when I finish speaking, I have to leave. I'm actually moderating 3 events back to back today. And so yeah. Why this makes a difference, why this matters to me is there are a couple of reasons. One, as a Black male and a young Black male growing up, I wasn't aware of all of the external trauma that I was going through that caused me to make the decisions I make, to trust or either don't trust people. But I knew what was happening in my home that was impacting me. I knew that when I saw my mom on drugs, what that did to me. When I saw my mom prostituting, what that did to me. When I was shot twice by my mom, what that did to me. I knew what was happening in the home, what that did to me, but I wasn't aware of all the external trauma that come from societal pressures, that come from political oppression that come from socio-political things that are happening in the news. I wasn't aware of that, right? But as I got older, I started to understand that I didn't escape my childhood trauma, and I didn't escape the childhood socio-political trauma that was around me. And when I got into the education field, I started to make the connection between socio-political trauma and educational outcomes. And this is important to me because a whole lot of boys who look just like me are going through these things, are oblivious to the impact of the decisions that they're making because of what they're seeing and because also what they can't control, some of the socio-political traumas. And these things show up in schools, and they show up, in programs that are meant to help them. They show up in the suspension numbers and in the expulsion numbers and in the dropout rates, and we see all of the manifestation of this trauma, and we try to address it there. But as someone who is in education, who starts schools, who do this work for a living, it matters to me because I don't want our community to continue to be impacted by the silent killer of not embracing mental wellness. We know that in our community as black men, and even in the brown community as well, the definition of masculinity doesn't always include embracing your emotions. From a very young age, your mama tell you to man up. What you crying for? I'll give you something to cry for. Quit crying. All of those things that, frankly, now we know that you should not say, right? That you should not encourage them to do, because they show up in other ways that are destructive, and then we end up being reactive to what they're doing and not necessarily proactive. And so I'd like to share a story about my own life, and that caused me to have to deal with some things. In 2012, I started Denver's first all-boys public charter school. And in 2014, the school was on the verge of closing. Not because of performance, but it was because of backdoor politics and other stuff that, that as a first-time school founder, that I just wasn't aware of. When that school closed, even though I wasn't a part of it when it closed, because I stepped out to start the foundation. When that school closed, I went into depression. I went into depression because everything about that school was tied to my identity. There was no separation between my work and who I was. And so I was depressed. I had anxiety about my identity. Everyone knew me as the guy who started the school. Everyone knew me as that guy. And moving here from New Orleans, moving to Denver from New Orleans, like my whole life was just transformed and moved. And when that school ended, I felt like I ended. Even though I had so much other success, but I hadn't learned to separate myself from my work, and also hadn't learned how to deal with failure or rejection. Because if you go back and think about what I told you about my upbringing, the only thing that I can control, the only thing that made me feel whole was my ability to control my professional life. And when someone took that away from me, when someone took the most significant thing away from me, I was in a tailspin, depressed, anxiety about my identity, worried about my future, even thinking about imposter syndrome, right? Like, did I really deserve it? I mean, was I not good enough to keep it? Well, I like to jump ahead right now and say that since then, I've created 3 more schools around the country. So that one had to die in order for the other ones to flourish. But in order for those things to happen, I had to go through what I call, my cave of Adullam moment. If any of you guys know the story of David in the 300, right? I had to go to my cave, and the way that I was able to cope, right, was through therapy. And again, it took a lot for me to go through therapy because it's taboo in our community, right? It took a lot for me to go through therapy. It took a lot for me to go reveal myself to somebody else. It took a lot for me to say, look, I know you guys think that I was amazing for opening the school and everybody, blah, 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 but guess what? I need to talk to somebody, and I need to spill my dirty laundry because I'm not whole. So I had to get over that hump. Right? And so therapy, I started to read about hope, right? I started to read other stories about other entrepreneurs and people who went through the same thing that I went through and was able to bounce back, right? I continued to work. I continued to work and build. And out of that dark moment and out of that cave came a couple things. One, a complete separation from my identity, from my work. I value me. I know me. There's enough great things about me to be able to even have done that, right? So now since then I've created 3 more schools, and my foundation has served over 12,000 boys around the country, and we are located in Denver but have footprints in 7 states, written 3 books. But the thing is that all of that is cool and that's nice, and what I admire about it is that I have the ability to do it, but if you took it away, I wouldn't go back in that same cave, because I know that I can do it again. I can do it again. And those are the things that we try to work with young men about. I had the pleasure with Stephanie and with Dr. Young to create a program called Building Better Boys. And Clarence, thank you for pouring into the young men too, Building Better Boys. And it's a program that's letting our young men know that it's okay to not be okay. Let's unravel this definition of what masculinity is in our community. And so long-term workable strategies, this is what I'll tell people, this is what I had to go through, is that, long hot showers help me. I don't know. Some of the therapists online, you tell me, I don't know. Long hot showers help me. Exercise help me. Golf, traveling, reading about others who overcame. Those are the things, right? And also focusing on the things that are going well. There are so many things that are going wrong and people trying to tell you, trying to knock you down, but focus on all the things that are going well. And there's a lot of great things going on in my life, and I'm grateful for it. And it's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about, talking to young men about this is because I don't want their lives derailed by something that they can really control. And I also don't want their lives derailed by them trying to live up to the Instagram hype or what anybody else tells them, period. You are good enough. Just show up. That's it, Frank.
That's that's it. That was incredible, my friend. And, you out in the audience, by the very fact that these gentlemen are coming on to talk to you about these things, sharing, being vulnerable about their stories, it means that they've agreed that there's no question off limits that you can ask them or bring to the table. And I'm going to start. I'm going to ask you one quick question, Dedrick, because you kind of answered. You said that you kind of developed some mechanisms through therapy that kind of helps you recognize these tendencies in you. Linking your identity to performance, things that you do, that you accomplish. Because I'm a saboteur, right? I'm your classical saboteur. When I get to a place where things are really good for me, I kind of subconsciously, at least this is my past, subconsciously find a way to jack it up and stuff. So I had to find ways to do that. So now that you've done 3 more schools, written several books, a lot of things that people would put at the forefront of saying as success. Are all these mechanisms are the ones keeping you on track, or there are other things that you can help us with when we attach our identities to things that we shouldn't?
Yeah, some of those things are still with me. I think the one that's most prevalent with me is reminding myself not to tie my identity to my work, right? That's the easiest thing to do, right? Is to puff your chest out and say that this is who I am and this is what I've done. But I know all too well how slippery that could be and how easily that could be pulled from you, especially in the nonprofit world that I'm in, which where you start stuff, but you turn it over to a board, like they could change their mind at any point, right? And so I continue to create. That's what I do. I continue to create. I continue to build. I continue to operate in the space that I have the gift in, and that keeps me, whole. Yesterday we graduated 45 young men from our summer camp, and to see their faces and to see their parents' gratitude and gratefulness, and to see kid A change from being kid A to kid B, by the end of the program, like those are the things that remind me of what and why I'm doing this. And it also helps me to remember my own internal locus of control. The more I have these conversations with people, in particular these young men, the more I remind myself, right? As we teach, we learn. So more I remind myself of what I went through and what is to come. So yeah, I mean, all those things are still present in my life, Frank. I mean, every one of those things is still present in my life.
Yeah, yeah, I totally get it. I really do. Someone mentioned, and I want to just throw this out. You feel free to use the chat on the bottom to ask questions or send messages. They wanted to encourage you, brother. They said, thanks for providing vulnerable leadership, Brother Derek. That's what we need. It's okay to not be okay. And I feel that. Great launch, my friend. You did an incredible job. We're so glad you're here. I trust that the rest of your day is going to be incredible and you're going to bring so much value to people as you're out doing your thing.
Thank you, Frank. Yeah, I got to jump off. I got to go lead a conversation between young men of color and cops trying to heal the community. So I got to go do that.
We'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
You bet.
All right.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, Dedrick Sims, we're so appreciative of him being here, doing that work and talking. So he set a bar, I believe, as our next speakers are coming on to talk, to be vulnerable, to be open, transparent about who you are as you are bringing home the meat today to allow people to understand why this is such an incredible space to talk about and to understand. Our next speaker is a king. We're so glad to have him because I know initially I had a little trouble with the last name. I'm gonna try it again, King Nabe. Is that close enough? But anyway, King is coming here. King, tell us a little bit about who you are and bring some wisdom to us today about what we're talking about.
All right. So again, the name is King Naib. I'm affectionately known in the boxing gym that I own, Santiago's Boxing Club, is Coach Jerome. But really, this thing is really not even about me. I'm not about to sit back and read off a list of stuff of accomplishments because this is near and dear to my heart, right? um, Mr. Derek, he definitely set the bar because he talked about like 2, 3 points that I wanted to talk about. But I'm glad that I didn't write anything and I'm going to speak from the heart. So it makes it just that much easier. Um, I come from a family where mental health literally has plagued us. My father, um, growing up, was schizophrenic. Um, it advanced to what is now called schizoaffective. You know, when I was growing up, I didn't understand what it was that I was actually seeing. I literally thought that my father was a superhero. And I would watch him do things that I'd never seen a normal individual be able to do. I mean, I've literally seen him pick up tables with one hand and throw them clean across the room. That would take most people a two-man job to be able to do. I've seen police officers where it literally took anywhere from 5 to 6 different officers be able to take him down. Seen them literally use his forehead to crack windshields and things of this particular nature. This is what it was that I was seeing when I was growing up. We talked about 4, 5, 6, 7 years old and whatnot on through life. And it wasn't until I got older that I understood that, oh, Papa wasn't a superhero. Papa had mental health issues. And then I began to understand that it was something that ran rampant within my family. Because my sister ended up having the same disease. I have aunties, cousins, as well as other family members that still have that same type of disease, whether it was schizophrenia, bipolar disease, several different others, several different others. So um, it became super important to me, especially when I found out that it was genetic, that it was genetic. So I had to do some research. I had to do some studying to learn about myself, about where I come from, so that I would have enough sense to know with my kids. I have 10 children, 10 children, or with my kids, I know what to look for in them. I know the signs and know the help that I'd be able to actually get them. I've been on my own since I was 12, 13 years old. 12, 13 years old. Got my first apartment and stuff when I was 16. And I had some serious, serious anger issues. I was one of those individuals that when I got angry, I would punch holes in the wall. Yeah, I would leave the house, and the first individual that I would come across, it was on and cracking. Didn't have to know him or anything of that particular nature. I had serious, serious anger issues. I went to anger management, court appointed, things of that particular nature. But there was something that was deeper that was going on inside of me, much deeper. I'm gonna fast forward just a tad bit, right? Because I just said I got 10 kids, right? I'm gonna tell a little story. And this is gonna piggyback off of what Derek was actually talking about, right? Because I grew up in that household where yeah, you had to man up. You had to man up. You could be bleeding, a bone hanging out and everything else, but you man up. So my son was is a boxer. All my kids, they pretty much box. We was at a national tournament, and he at the time was ranked number one. He was ranked number one. It was going time for him to get in the ring, get ready, and basically do his thing. I'm expecting him to win it all, but something was a little bit off about him that day, and I kind of played off to it. Mm, he gonna be all right. He's talented enough to be able to get through this thing. And literally, he lost to someone that he shouldn't have lost to. And I'm going to tell you now, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I lost my mind. When he came out of that ring, literally one of my other coaches had to snag him up, pull him away before I could get over there to him. Now, don't get me wrong. He had about a minute and a half before I got to him, and I laid into him. He definitely got it. But then I had to put my daddy hat on. I took him outside and set him down, and I asked him, like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And I'm looking at him, and I'm looking at my son hold back these tears. Because remember, I had been doing the exact same thing that my parents have been doing to me. Man up. I don't want to see no tears at all. Accept it. And I'm looking at my son, and I'm seeing him trying to be a man and hold this thing in. And I ended up and I embraced him. And I just whispered in his ear, let it out. When I say this joker let out a wail that shook my soul, literally, he let out a wail that brought me to tears. And it was in that particular moment that I realized that not just my son, but myself and a lot of other melanated men had never been given permission to have emotions. We had never been given permissions to have emotions. We hear, oh, that's a feminine emotion. When there is no such thing as a feminine or masculine emotion, it is simply emotions. The same emotions that my wife and my daughters go through, it's the same emotions that myself as well as my sons go through. And what has happened is over time, We have bottled up these emotions. I want y'all to think about something, right? Imagine if someone sold up your bowels and you can't go use the restroom. For every doctor up here or nurse or anything of that particular nature, you know that if it can't come out of the bottom, what is going to happen? It's going to come out of the top. And the thing about it is, when it comes out of the top, it then becomes toxic and can literally poison your system to where you can lose your life. And that is what we have been seeing within ourselves, within our communities, is that our bowels have been sold up. The bowels of our emotions have been sold up to the point where we don't have the ability to be able to release them. And when it comes out toxic and potentially life threatening. But I'm here today to stand in the gap with the rest of the speakers that are up here and let you know that it is okay. You have emotions. You will always have emotions. And ladies, if we have any ladies up here, I'm gonna let y'all know y'all are very well equipped in handling your emotions. Whereas we're gonna need some assistance because in coming to the realization that we do have the same emotions that y'all have, we don't have the education, we don't have the time that y'all have already invested in knowing how to handle our emotions, which is the reason why therapy, your ability as women to nurture us and to be able to nurture ourselves, the different outlets and stuff that it is that we have out there. I'm gonna tell you now, mine is boxing. Mine is boxing. My best friend is that boxing bag. Because you know what? It takes whatever it is that I put out to him. No matter how angry I am, no matter how sad I am, I can hit it as hard as I can. I can holler at it as loud as I want to. It's going to sit there. It's going to take it and allow me to release it in a positive manner. And that's what it is that we need. You need to find that place. Find that place that is positive for you to be able to release the emotions that are literally leading us into the mental diseases that we've been coming into, the depression, because that's part of the source. That is part of the source. So before I go and allow the next speakers to be able to come on, I'm going to leave everyone with this. Know thyself. When I'm talking about know thyself, I'm not just talking about knowing your ancestors. I'm talking about you, the inner workings of you, those skeletons that's in the closet, those elephants that's in the room, those walls that have been built over the things that have happened in our lives. Take out the time to go back and address them. Just like you do an onion, peel it back. Because I assure you, if you just try and cut into it, it's going to be painful and you're going to find yourself in tears. Take the time to peel it back. Ask yourself why. And when I'm talking about knowing thyself, make sure you know your parents as well. Your parents as well. Because just like my father had the ability to be able to pass on to me and to my seed, and I need to know these things, you need to know the exact same thing. So even if you don't have a relationship with your mother or with your father, I'm going to encourage you to go out there, find them, not for them, but for you, so that you would know yourself to the fullest at its core. And I assure you that when you put in the work and you get to the place where you are operating in the fullness of yourself, there will be no one that will be able to shut your light out. It's my time.
Yeah, if we could do what we're doing, we would be applauding right now, my friend. That was an incredible, incredible piece that you brought. The audience was engaged. They've been sending messages to the chat room, oohing and awing about the incredible inspiration and impact of your message today, King. Thank you so very much. We see a few hands coming up on the screens now, clapping as well. This is what I am talking about. As we bring these gentlemen together today to talk about these issues, it's more. Even though people love to be informed, I like being informed. But what's going to take us to the next step in this space that we're fighting through is people to inspire us forward. People that we know that we can relate to that have gone through stuff that we may be going through or we've gone through ourselves as well. King, that was incredibly inspiring today, my friend. I want to give you another shout out for being so complimentary of your 10 children. We definitely need to see black men that are talking and bragging about their babies and et cetera, and engage with their children as well. Another space we won't go into today, but I just want to say thank you for being who you are. Is there any other questions that we might be able to address for King before we go to our next speaker? Just a great job. I'm having more fun than an old dude should be allowed to have. I'm telling you, this is cool. I'm just so glad I don't have to speak today and follow you guys because you guys are jamming it today. Great job, my brother. I look forward to engaging with you again sometime here in the near future. Let me look in the chat room real quick just to make sure there's not something there that someone wants to ask you. Bringing it up. And it says, thank you for sharing. Black women can be nurturing. Black men can be nurturing too and help one another. I think it's a powerful for black men to have access to other black men who are compassionate and nurturing and create great environment. So that is one thing that someone said. There's so many other comments in the chat room about your talk, my friend. So once again, we want to thank King Nabe for being with us today, bringing the heat and bringing the truth and sharing who he is and what he's doing in community. Next, our next speaker, I had an opportunity just recently to meet this young man in public. I mean, in person. For the very first time, I'd heard his name in community and knows that he is passionate about the work that we're doing today. An incredible communicator. Clarence Bumpus, you tell us a little bit about who you are and talk to us, my brother.
Hey, peace and blessings all. Thanks, Frank. Man, just as we talked about, Frank, man, this is how we do it, right? We're putting the unity back in community as a whole, right? And we're actually touching on some of those things. I've heard connectedness, right? Relational connectedness, which is a huge piece. Masculinity and toxic masculinity versus manhood and healthy manhood, and how to like actually contribute to society in a more healthy way, right? And that kind of brings me what I kind of had to bring to today was and all that I'm seeing, right, especially with this pandemic, there is a great disconnect between most of us in the minority culture, especially in the male role, right, in terms of that toxic masculinity, and then vice versa in terms of the way it's being perpetuated in our culture and how these young men are literally like soaking this stuff in and perpetuating it, right? So that's kind of what I'm seeing most detrimentally, right? And so like there is this disconnect and this perpetuation of this toxic masculinity culture, or this toxic masculine culture that tells boys that we are not allowed to feel these emotions, right? And I had the pleasure of working with the Better Boys organization and the Sims Fayola Foundation, and talking to the young men about just this subject. And it was super powerful to see just how how powerful a platform such as this, a safe space to actually talk about these things and normalize having these conversations is, right? So we're talking, these young men are like in 5th through 8th grade, and literally we get to the 8th grade boys that have been kind of labeled as a little bit rambunctious, and we have already had reports about this young man who has self-proclaimed himself to be a bad kid, right? And so in this bad kid mentality, right, the perpetuation of the cycle that his father has introduced him to, we were talking about those modeled behaviors, right, kind of came out in a sense of his cry for help, right? And a lot of us can kind of relate to that sense of manhood, right? We were all kind of in this despondent place where we were being either raised in a single parent home or where we were kind of feeling disconnected from any kind of male role models. And so we went out searching for that through a lot of what society kind of told us made men, right? Whether that meant getting notches on your belt in an objectifying way, whether that meant, you know, you buying into whatever the hip hop culture is, or whatever the trend is, right? These young men were actually in this safe space, and we got to a point to where one of these young men was talking about, the same bad kid was talking about how his father has modeled so many negative behaviors but kind of told him, do as I say and not as I do, which is a common thing, well, at least I know in my upbringing, right? In terms of how you are supposed to be a man, right? You're not supposed to treat women this way, you're supposed to protect women, children, old folks. But in all of what is mainstream, we see the very opposite, right? And so it's kind of difficult to navigate in that realm when you don't have someone to model these pro-social behaviors, right? And so I guess my main point to all of this is being one of these kids, right, and having this conversation and watching these kiddos process their emotions and actually try to support one another through their experiences reminded me of just how far we have not come as men as a whole, right? Because we're still buying into what is being told, right? We are still trying to go with this narrative of this big macho exterior where we man things up and we internalize and we compartmentalize things until they become toxic, right? And we start hurting the very ones that we've promised to protect. And so I was trying to get these young dudes to actually see like just how toxic things are in terms of the music we listen to. And so I asked them to kind of like acknowledge who their favorite rappers were, et cetera, right? And so then we start talking about how just influential these lyrics were, right? So they started rapping, you know what I mean, verbatim, every word, da 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 da. And I said, okay, now stop, right? All of these words and all of these things, right? Yourself in these shoes, right? And ask how you would feel internally if someone did this to one of the women who is raising you, right? One of the women who's in your life right now that you care about, someone that you actually have feelings for, or you just in general. They're like, well, no, that's not how it goes. It's not how it goes, right? Everybody's got a different justification because it's cool, right? Well, nah, he wouldn't do that. That's just a song, right? And so then we start talking about just how lonely and sad these kids are, right? With all this substance abuse and all these co-occurring disorders. We were talking about the anxiety and the depression, right? We hear about all these dudes talking about how they can't trust anybody, how it's war on everybody else, and how these angry, angry men who were just never loved and actually someone else's favorite person, right? In terms of this male connectedness, that they are not able to foster and sustain actual positive relationships in life, right? And so as we are connecting these dots between these favorite songs about how they are doing all the syrup and the lean and all these other things, right, we're talking about how they miss their homeboys and how they can't tell nobody else and how they tried to trust one woman outside of their mother and then it fell apart, and how all of these different things, right? And so, and all of that being said, right, I know I'm all over the place, so just bear with me, right? All of that being said, it's like literally we have to start normalizing these conversations and challenging them with some more pro-social communication, right? Because he who controls the communication controls the culture, unfortunately. And the folks who are in control of our communication that is with this next generation and with the older generation is completely defunct. These are sad and broken individuals who are literally kind of spewing the same brokenness, right? We're in the same cycle. And so literally we're seeing the same individuals grow up and we're wondering why things haven't changed. Right. And so the quality of life alone in our communities is at a detrimental point because we're not able to have these communications. Right. We're not able to have these conversations with our son and normalize the emotions. We're not able to do these kind of things. And that's why we see these athletes and these one dimensional individuals failing miserably once they get to a certain point. Right. Because they were never taught the self regulation. Right. And once they don't have that self regulation, they can never build the awareness because they're always in this constant state of fight or flight kind of turmoil. Right. And that's why we get all these angry young men who eventually turn into targets. Right. And that's kind of where we start disrupting that and we start doing some of that generational healing by having some of these conversations. And a part of the entire powerful piece that I did with the Better Boys was that I kind of approached the conversation with every taboo from a social standpoint of a young black man, right? You don't wear the short like dad shorts, right? You don't wear pink. You don't talk about feminism. You don't talk about all these other things because society has said that's not a part of your manhood, right? That's not a part of what it means to be a healthy man. In order to be a healthy man, in order to be a man as a whole, you have to display all of these character traits in which are a lot more toxic than beneficial. And so I kind of lost myself. Oh, here we go. So why does all of this matter to me in terms of like why we do need to have that conversation is because literally these are the young men who are going to be dating the young daughters, right? These are the young men who are going to be leading the next generations. These are the young men who are literally going to be passing on the genealogy and specific traits, right? These are the ones who are going to either perpetuate some of these stereotypes or going to be the ones debunking it and moving forward and trying to reestablish new narratives, right? This is the healthy manhood that is literally rebuilding communities and these young men from inside out, as opposed to just this one dimensional performance based thing. That's kind of what I was getting to. My bad. Thanks, guys. That was long winded. Should have wrote that down, but I appreciate that. I didn't want to get too deep.
All righty. I think what my takeaway, Clarence, from your talk, and let me read a couple of comments that people said. I thought this was incredibly interesting. Something that someone said about your talk. Let me bring it back up here. Someone said, I know this brother named Clarence isn't popular, man, because young black men are so protective of rap and the accompanying culture. But it's destroying us, so he is right. Now, whether you agree or disagree with that comment or not, I think that these places are places that we get to talk about these particular things because as I know, sometimes conversation is censored. We can't talk about the things that are really heavy, the things that are really hard for us to walk through. Someone wrote also, I realized a lot of my thoughts were tied to negative heavy metal music, so I stopped listening to music completely. I'm assuming the person that wrote that meant that really kind of changed their life and gave them opportunity to think more clearly and to think, knowing these messages that were coming in were being somewhat harmful. Someone says, thank you, facts, and you said it, anxiety. What is high functioning anxiety, etc.? Trying to assimilate and have a wide skill set or interest, but what and where is the opportunities? The above can create self-doubt. I'm sorry, having a little problem scrolling here. Self-doubt. Okay. And self-sabotage and future confusion of identity. Someone says, thanks for getting it at the youth, the young man. Clarence was a young man himself. I think some of the places he was crossing is going to be controversial in our community because they're protected like sacred cows. But we have to be able to talk about these things and how it's influencing our community, how it's influencing our mental health, and getting an opportunity to bring it to the table and seeing if there's some way to bridge the gap there. Clarence, thank you. We appreciate you, my friend.
No doubt. Can I drop one last piece? I'm sorry.
Shoot, absolutely.
Right. To wrap all that into the importance of the mental health piece, right? Like, so, right, in my own journey, right, these little jerseys and whatnot back there, right? So I fell into my outlet, which was a part of the societal push, right? This is what your masculinity is. This is how you push this outlet of anger, right? All of your issues stay between the white lines, right? You push this out on someone else, right? Constructively. But a lot of what is not being talked about within these realms, right, is the amount of poor mental health status, right? The poor mental conditioning and the amount of toxic masculinity that's flooding that mental health revenue, right? Like, so, oh, like, speaking from my own, like, collegiate, from Division 1 to Division 1, like my own little small professional stints and all these other things, you see how detrimental it can be to one's mindset, right? Like, in terms of the regulation, right? You look at players like Pac-Man Jones, you look at certain individuals that get put on these microscopes in terms of these African American athletes, right? Or these indigenous folks, right? And think about what's being told to them, right? In terms of not being able to be themselves, right? You're not allowed to speak on your own behalf. You're not allowed to feel on your own behalf. And damn, you say anything publicly about it, right? And shame the organization, because then you will be overtly scrutinized, right? And so then we're starting to see that division and isolation, which is literally what it means to be a high functioning and high level athlete, right? But no one's talking about the level of anxiety, the level of depression, the level of identity crisis and loss of identity and imposter syndrome that these folks face after sports or before sports, or when they don't make the cut, or what happens in the midst of all of this, right? And so we sell these kids this one-dimensional dream of, this is what it looks like to be this Superman, right? This is what it looks like to be LeBron, but we're not talking about all of the different scrutinies LeBron has to face, all of the different things that he has to put in place in order to maintain himself, right? And keep his own balance to do what he's doing. Right? We're not talking about those things, or we're not talking about the athletes that just got cut from the hard knocks, right? The rookie training days. We're not talking about that stuff. We're not talking about the guys who are attempting suicide or stuck in their room facing all these different depressions and substance abuse issues. We're not talking about that stuff. And so this is where we do it. And that's why, right, talking about how you're feeling to others and being able to effectively communicate, right, exactly what's going on and being able to regulate is important, right? Because without, and you internalize, it literally can be toxic and create those illnesses that King was talking about. That's all I got.
Absolutely. Indeed, brother. Absolutely. There's a couple more comments, and you in the comments or down in the chat stage, we'll come right back. I will not ignore your chat or your comment.
Looks like he froze out. I don't know if he has a backup on this meeting that can facilitate or moderate for him.
No, no one to back up. Just give him a minute to see if he signs back on. Just a minute.
Yep, I'm just waiting on Frank. I guess he fell off.
Yeah.
Hopefully he signs back in.
Well, we're going to take a break here, Stephanie.
Yes.
So maybe
Yes.
this is a good time to take a natural break, and
Yeah.
then we can come back. How's that?
Well, let's see. What we can do is we have a poll. Actually, let's do the poll, and I'm going to be sending out a poll for everyone. I'm going to be launching it right now. Okay. Do you guys see it?
Yep.
Okay, can everyone do the poll? And then it should tell me once everyone's done. Okay, I think it was a few more people that came in. And if you guys, the new folks, I think it was Rashanta. Rashanta, if you can hear me, say something. Okay, did everyone get it? Everyone's finished? Just put your hands up if you're done. Okay. Okay. All new people, if you see the poll, please take the poll.
Did you send it to our email?
Nope, it should be right in the
Right.
Okay. I'll just end it now and relaunch it. Okay, I'll relaunch it. Okay, I relaunched it for folks that weren't able to take it. No, if you did it already, if you already did the poll, you don't need to redo it.
Okay, I did it, Stephanie.
Okay, okay. Okay, so since we are still in the break and we lost Frank, he has not texted me at all. So what we're gonna do is, this will be the break, and hopefully, let's see, Kurt, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Stephanie.
Oh, okay. Did you want to go and talk about your organization?
Sure, yeah, I can talk about NAMI real quick.
Okay.
So thanks, and thanks for having me here today. So my name's Kirk Woundy, and I'm with the Colorado Springs affiliate of NAMI, or the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And I just want to say the speakers today have been incredible. So you guys, thank you so much for sharing, and Stephanie and Frank, thanks for finding such awesome speakers. You know, Dedrick said it's okay to not be okay, and I just kind of want to underline that it has to be, because there are so many of us who are not okay. You know, it's 1 in 5 people in any given year who are going to experience a mental health condition. And with COVID, it's just gotten that much harder. You know, at NAMI, we're providing free mental health education support and advocacy services for people and families who are navigating mental illness. So we try to be the first point of contact for people as they start thinking about mental health and mental health issues, maybe for the first time. That can be, you know, learning more about symptoms or a diagnosis, or it could be learning about resources for legal support or criminal justice support or housing. You know, we're part of a national grassroots network, but we in Colorado Springs are a small 501c3 nonprofit, totally independent of any large healthcare organizations or pharmaceutical providers. We're not clinicians, we're peers, we're people with lived experience. You know, I come to this with depression and anxiety. And so, King and Clarence, like the idea of doing what you just did, talking off the cuff the way that you just did, that's totally terrifying for me. You guys are amazing. But our executive director has a grown daughter who lives with bipolar disorder, and it's like that all the way down the line, all the way through our 100+ volunteers. These are people who speak a language of lived experience, and we believe in the value of that because we know that mental health issues can be isolating. That said, we also recognize that lived mental health experience is a lot more powerful to relate to when it's shared by people who look like you, who have shared life experience. And there are obviously challenges and struggles that I can't relate to as a white man. And in many ways, to be frank, NAMI as an organization has been behind in reaching and serving communities of color. For a long time, the organization just basically like hung a shingle, and whoever came, and got service. And of course, those would be people who had the greatest access already to therapy and healthcare, and we're coming from communities with lesser amounts of stigma. I just want to say that we acknowledge that, and we're working on doing better, starting with diversifying our board and staff and volunteer base, and kind of moving all the way into programs, doing things like offering no-cost mental health first aid trainings to Spanish-speaking communities in Southeast Colorado Springs. But there's so much more we need to do, and the speakers today have underlined that in such a powerful way, and for that, again, I'm just super grateful. So just real quick, what we can offer the community right now. Every week we do free virtual support groups, drop-in 90-minute groups led by people who either live with mental illness or who love someone who lives with mental illness. And then we also do in-person groups. We've been doing that since early June, meeting at First United Methodist Church downtown in Colorado Springs. Every Thursday night, again, it's totally free. Just a 90-minute opportunity to kind of be in a community with other people who are be going through some of the same challenges, whether related to bipolar disorder, schizoaffective, depression, PTSD, whatever it might be. It's a community that's just kind of ready to welcome other people in. We're also going to be offering our first in-person peer-to-peer course since the start of the pandemic in late August. This is a free 2-hour class for people living with mental illness that meets once a week for 8 weeks. And together, students kind of learn to more effectively interact with healthcare providers, how to create a relapse prevention plan, where to find good resources for managing their illnesses. And we offer similar programs for family members of people who are living with mental illness. So if there's something you feel like you could pick up from any one of these resources, or if you want to talk with us about volunteering or anything else, doing something together, got any questions, please reach out. I'll put my phone number and email in the chat box. And we're located at 1615 South Murray Boulevard in Southeast Colorado Springs on the Silver Key campus, and online at namicoloradosprings.org. So please reach out anytime. And again, just thanks for having me here. Really appreciate the opportunity to learn from you all.
Thanks, Kurt. And Kirk and those folks over at NAMI, they have been a tremendous resource for us over here at Another Life Foundation. So thanks, Kurt. He's actually, NAMI Colorado Springs has been with us from the beginning with the Black Men's Project. So we really appreciate it. Okay, so our next speaker up is Melvin Greer. Melvin, you ready?
I just needed to unmute, so I'm ready.
Okay, go ahead.
My name is Melvin Greer. I'm the a social worker and the owner of Motivational One Counseling in Colorado Springs. And I want to thank, first of all, before I get started, it is Another Life Foundation, you, Stephanie, for inviting me. And Frank, if he was here, I would thank him. And also I do want to give a shout out to NAMI as well. They're a great organization in the community and always show up for these events. So I just want to say that first of all. One of the things I wanted to talk about, I was listening to everybody and so many things that were being said, and I was quickly trying, and I think Frank's back, or am I wrong? So, but anyway, so, and there were so many things being said, and I also was trying to jot down, take notes, and and found, that a lot of what I'm going to say, it may be a little bit redundant. But one of the things I first want to say is that, that mental health or mental wellness, it's not taken seriously in the mental health field. And it's because I think because people want to deny its existence. And especially when we talk about in the Black community, a lot of the problems also stems from not recognizing what it is and who gets it. African Black men, in terms of mental health, um, uh, they essentially develop a mental illness, and 7% of the mental illness is around depression. And Black men, for the most part, will also suffer from this in their lifetime at one point in time or another. A lot of people, when we talk about mental illness, the biggest thing that prevents people getting treatment for mental illness is just the stigma. And this is a good time to be talking about it, because I just want to bring up, Simone Biles and the comments about her quitting, and someone, and I forget who it was, but it was one of a talk show hosts or something. He was a Black man saying that we are growing up and we're making people soft, and he doesn't buy the fact is that she suffered from a mental illness, and the whole thing is, like, when it comes to Black men being vulnerable about their mental illness, they are referred to as being, and you can probably guess what it is. It certainly is not a flattering term. So we don't talk about it. We don't like some of the speakers talked before this. We are still stigmatized about, mental illness and getting help for it, because it makes us look weak. Okay. In our society, Black men, a lot of reported mental illness for Black men is basically underestimated. So a lot more out there that are needing help, but they don't recognize that they need help, or if they do, they minimize it. So I can do this myself. I can fix this myself. Imagine this, that every day you go to work, and you've been working at this place for, several years, 4 or 5 years. And every time, you're doing a great job, you get that, kudos for all that, doing a great job, that you went above and beyond. And that one day you do you're outstanding because you're outworking all your other people, and somebody comes along who has a different color skin, as in white, and they promote that person, and they pat you on the head, say, "You're doing a great job, but your time is going to come. So, but I want you to keep showing up and doing this." And they do that day in and day out. And at some point in time, they realize that they're angry, but they don't say that they're angry or they're depressed. They don't go to work anymore. They don't understand what's going on with them. And yet, one day, you wake up and you realize, I don't want to go to work anymore. I don't want to get out of bed. I don't like myself. And this is one of a client of mine who came in with these symptoms, and he was blaming himself for what was going on with him. And I had to tell him, the problem isn't with you, It's what's happening to you, that you don't realize that you have a mental illness. And he says, I don't have a mental illness. I mean, no, I think it's something else. I said, well, let's look at the facts. You know, that you can't get out of bed, you're not sleeping, you're not eating, you don't want to go into work. Your main issue is that you get, pat on the head and say you're doing a good job, but you never get promoted. What do you think is going on with you? And for the first time, he had to take into account that his depression was brought on because of his rage that he kept suppressing. And that's a mental illness, We have a death rate that is at least twice as high as those for women for suicide or cirrhosis of the liver and homicide. And that's an amazing statistic. I see this a lot when I work with people, with clients that come in, especially clients of color, who struggle and with an unknown illness, at least to them, but suffering from post-traumatic stress, but they don't even know what their trauma was. And the reason that they don't know is because they don't necessarily go and seek help. What happens is a lot of times they've been told, and I think you heard another speaker talk about, you can do this, your job is just keep pushing on. And mental health, it's something that other people may have, but you don't, because then that's just a cop-out. And when I was talking about Simone Biles, and this talk show person said that, the big headline was Simone Biles quits on her team. She quits on the team because she was doing some self-care, because she has because she says, I have a mental illness. But no, we really can't, because why? Because there's a stigma, because people don't believe that there's such a thing. So, Black men struggle with the idea of being openly vulnerable and sharing their emotions. And I think our Speaker King presented an eloquent illustration of that. And when he said that, that his son just wailed when he gave him permission, that's what happens with a lot of Black men. When you give them permission to own their feelings and to own their emotions. And a lot of them, even then, feel there's something wrong in doing that. And then they get criticized by others that they're not they're not a man. And that's a sad commentary. Many men struggle with the idea of being openly vulnerable and sharing their emotions. And that's taught at a very young age. Those young men who grow up and being very sensitive, they are often the subject of ridicule and shaming for emoting what is natural and healthy, expressing their feelings. That's healthy. But we say, no, you can't do that. We as Black men face a unique challenge that most of us, or our unique challenges in what is most prized about us, and that is our looks or our bodies or our talents, but rarely ever because of our intelligence and our emotional intelligence. We don't get kudos for that. So we don't express those or expose ourselves to those things. Someone talked about rap songs. It's not just rap songs that just sets us up. It also has to do with, you know, our whole social culture around who we are. We put a lot of emphasis on looks, talents, and we minimize that sometimes when you reach fame or just living day to day, there's a toll. And a lot of times we ignore that. If we don't take, you know, mental wellness seriously, you know, then and we put a lot of emphasis on our bodies, but not on our minds, then we're doing a real disservice to ourselves. I see a lot of, you know, if you look at some of the comments of some of the people like, you know, Kanye West, Kid Cudi, and others who talk about their, well, Kanye West, I think he kind of denies that he has a mental illness, but some of the ones that have come out and talked openly about their depression, we see that that is giving permission for us to talk about it, but we still need to do more. You know, we still need to see more of us talking about a mental illness and talking about it and seeing that us talking about it is a strength and not a weakness. And so one of the challenges that I have is, you know, it's tough when, you know, I'm doing therapy with, you know, someone and they have a difficult time opening up. And so they can't get help or ask for help if they aren't willing to be vulnerable. So I just want to say, I don't want to take up a lot of time because I want to have questions. So I'm just going to read a quote. And it talks just a little bit about trauma. I think that for a lot of us in the Black community, we have experienced trauma. It may not look like trauma, but in fact we have. Trauma is personal. It does not disappear if it's not validated. When it is ignored or invalidated, the silent screams continue, internally heard only by the one held captive. When someone enters the pain and hears the screams, that's when healing can begin. And that's my time. Thank you.
Well, I'm back. So, Melvin, I heard your incredible presentation. You really summarized some things that have been spoken about before, brought some new, very interesting information to the table. That last piece you read was just very potent. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, always being willing to engage in this forum. You are very, very appreciated here at Another Life Foundation and the Black Man's Project. So thank you very much. I didn't see any questions. There's a lot of conversation going on in the chat room right now, which is really good. I'll apologize for blanking out. I've been having computer problems all morning and you guys just totally froze up on me. So if we have some other stuff that comes up in the chat room, we'll bring them back to the fore. But we're going to move on now to our next speaker, Carrie L. Brooks. Carrie, tell us a little bit about who you are, what's going on with you, my friend, and what you are bringing to the table for all of us today.
Frank, thank you for the invitation. I want to thank Another Life Foundation and Stephanie for having me here. I really, really appreciate it. And definitely a shout out to all the other speakers. I'm sitting here taking notes because it's definitely been a learning experience. They are dropping some serious knowledge and a lot of things for us to talk about in our own homes. I believe it begins in the home. For me personally, I've born and raised in Alabama, been in federal law enforcement for about the last 30 years. And I also I have 5 boys And I have one son, my oldest son, that was diagnosed with autism. So it's been quite a journey for us as a family. But it started out, like I say, I believe it starts in the home. And I want to definitely give a lot of thanks to my mom. It wasn't the perfect home, but she did the very best that she could. We were financially poor, definitely financially poor, but spiritually, love, we were extremely rich. My mom continues to love each and every one of us. And with her understanding of everything, she did the very best to help me and my brothers, which is a total of 5 of us, and one sister, to become good human beings. So starting out early in life, I had a good support system. And I believe when it comes to mental wellness, having a good support system is paramount. It's absolutely paramount. But experiencing life as a young Black man in the South, it definitely has its challenges. so it started out just, wanting to go to college, not having not having the resources, or not knowing where to look for the resources to go to college. And even once I got to college, I realized that I wasn't prepared for it. So trying to keep up, and also trying to walk on the football team to earn a scholarship, had its own challenges as well while trying to work. But along the way, also these things presented some challenges, but they also built some character into me as well. So once I was able to get a scholarship in football, play there, and go on to graduate, I wanted to become a federal law enforcement agent. And I've never seen a Black federal law enforcement agent when I was growing up. That wasn't one in my neighborhood, but I just continued to press forward. And that was challenging as well. Took a lot of mental toll. I remember graduating from college and coming home, and I had put out so many resumes, so many applications, and I just couldn't find a job. And the only thing that I heard was, when I was from a young boy to a young man, is listen, grow up, go to college, get a good job. I'm like, wow, okay, that's all I gotta do? Count me in. It didn't happen. It did not happen. And I think it hit me so hard right around, I had a couple of degrees and I'm sitting there and I can't find a job. And it's like, why is it that everyone who doesn't look like me, they have 2 or 3 job opportunities coming out of college and I don't have one? And I was just so angry at everybody, whoever told me, go to college, get a job, you're just gonna do just fine. And and I give credit to my mom. She was been a great support system when I was young, and even then. And she just told me, just Carrie, just keep moving forward, and you're going to be fine. But when you're in it, you don't want to hear that. You do not want to hear that. A couple of outlets that I had as a young person, even until to this day, is exercise. I believe in exercise. That was my outlet. That was my therapy, to be able to go and just push myself, just push myself to new bounds on, can I do this? And I enjoy exercise, so it wasn't hard for me. I enjoy it. So that wasn't a difficult challenge for me, but it was just a great outlet for me. So I continued to process and go through life, eventually became a federal law enforcement agent. And I would go on to have my first son. And this was the greatest crisis of our lives when we were told that our son was diagnosed with autism. Now, the autism spectrum disorder is a developmental disability that affects social, communication, and behavioral skills in the individual significantly. Our son was born and he was speaking, he was progressing fine. According to our practitioner, he was progressing just fine. And the thing that we start to notice is he started to have these temper tantrums. He started to be very allergic to different foods. He would speak, his speech was on par, his speech regressed. He wasn't sleeping during the night, and we just had no idea what was going on with him. And we took him to the doctor. Officially, we got a diagnosis that it was autism. And the thing that just threw a punch to our gut was that the doctor told us, prepare your son for a group home. There's nothing you can do for him focus on having other children. As a father, that was devastating. How is it that you can look at my son and tell me what his future is going to be? When he got diagnosed, he was 2.5, going on 3 years old. So how can you look at him and tell me what his future is going to be? But what you come to find is that autism, and we're talking almost, my son is 21 now. So we're talking almost about 17 years ago when he was diagnosed. A lot of people didn't want to talk about it, especially males. It's taboo then, and it's still taboo now to say that my son or even myself, have autism or struggling with something. And as a father, I felt bad for my son because he had me as a father and I didn't know anything about autism, nothing whatsoever. And how was I going to help him? What did it look like for me? And if you want to talk about getting in touch with your emotions, there were several, but just let's say a lot of crying was involved. So a lot of crying was involved as to that. I do not know how to help my son. I do not know how to help myself. I don't know what autism is. I have no idea. So we started this journey, our crisis rather, trying to understand how can we go about getting help. And what we saw in the beginning is that everyone was talking medication from the get-go, from the onset. And I have no problem with medication if it's needed, but I wanted to know, was there any other ways that we could help him, any other protocols, any other treatment that we could use to help him reach his full potential? What can we do? And I just noticed that people just kept saying, oh, he's hyperactive, let's use medication for him to get him to calm down, let's use medication to help him to sleep. We did not want to do that. We did not want to do that. And we started going to these autism conferences. And one thing that I noticed, I saw all mothers. For the most part, I saw all mothers at the conferences. And I'm looking around and like, where are the men? And this was, like I say, this was, we're talking 17 years ago. I'm like, where are the men? And I kept meeting different mothers and kept trying to understand what was going on. And we jumped in and we developed some strategies for our son, how we could go about helping him, to develop life strategies for him that was going to help him progress in life. But the journey just wasn't about him. The journey was not about him because, you see, I wanted to teach my son everything that I knew so that he could be a success in life. But what I come to find out is my son has taught me more than I would ever teach him. Being at the bottom and going through that crisis, it's not pretty in the beginning, but I did a lot of, for me personally, I did a lot of journaling. I started writing everything down. All of my feelings, I just started writing them down. I just started talking about how was I feeling? How was I going to deal with this? And my son, and the situation that my family and I have gone through with him, he has taught me to be a better father. He has taught me to be a better human being. So my why is there something that I can do to help him? And if so, can I share that with everyone else to help someone else? My son taught me a lot. So once we got him to a certain situation where he was reading, he was sleeping, he was eating, he eventually ended up graduating with honors from high school and is enrolled in college. And I wanted to be done with autism because it was very, very painful experience to go through for me personally. And I wanted to just put it behind me. But as I continued to talk to mothers, they would ask me, can you talk, to my husband? I'm like, well, if he want to talk to me, I'll talk to him. But if he doesn't want to talk to me, I'm not talking to him. So they kept requesting this. So I would do a program here or there, and I would get more and more people, who were willing to talk. And so I wanted to give something back because I didn't want anyone to go through this journey by themselves. I didn't want anyone to think that autism is a taboo. It's not. There's just a huge, misconceptions out there about autism. And I wanted people to know they're not alone. I wanted people to know there is hope. I want people to know there is something that you can do. I want people to know that, listen, never ever give up and always believe that there's something that you can do. So we journaled this and put this in our book, Autism Also Allow Your Greatest Christ to Become Your Greatest Miracle. And I was speaking to, the doctor earlier, when you write about your feelings and your emotions that have been private to you, and you share them with someone else, you open up this place of vulnerability. And there's power in telling your story. There's power in sharing your story. And my whole thing is I had no idea how people would take this book. I had no idea how they would take my emotion. And I just wanted to put it out there because if one person, especially a Black man, could say, you know what? I understand where you're coming from. Thank you for writing this. I felt that, hey, I had contributed. I felt that I had contributed. So my thing was to share my story. And at one point in time when I was working in Nigeria, I had a meeting with a doctor and he told me, he said, listen, I want to thank you for sharing your story. This was even before the book was written. This was just doing some training. He said, I want to thank you for sharing your story. He said, of course, he has the medical background. He said, I've been to medical school. I have the degrees. I have the education as it relates to autism. But he said, I have not lived through autism with a child, with my own child. So my goal was to share my story and to hopefully have an impact on fathers, in particular, Black fathers, that there's no shame in having a son or having a child that is different. There's no shame. And one of the things when I look at it, even all of my sons, they teach me so much. And I've always wondered, and the reason I have 5 boys is because I was trying to get a girl. So that's why I have 5 boys. I was trying to get a girl, and I'm like, God, am I gonna have, one girl? Just one girl? So that didn't happen. But I do have 5 boys, and the relationship that we have now is for me to educate them on being mentally well so that not only they treat themselves well, but when they're old enough and meet a young lady, they can treat her well also. Teach them to have respect for other people, but also to have respect, for your partner, your wife, once you get older. And we model that. We just don't talk about it. We model that in the house. My kids, they are allowed, they have the opportunity to express themselves. When I was growing up, Alabama, switches, listen, listen, you don't talk back to adults. This is the way it is. But our kids have an opportunity to express themselves in a respectful way. And anytime that they have a situation at school that didn't go their way, they've gotten in trouble, we sit down and we talk about it. And one thing that I like to do with the kids, and so does my wife, we would ask them, what happened at school? And they would tell us what happened. What did you do? And they would tell us what they did. And sometimes as young people, it's not a good choice. It's not a good choice of what they decided to do when their emotion came up and they were angry. And instead of responding, they wanted to react to the situation based on the emotion that they were feeling at that particular time. So we use terms that they can understand in their own language. And we will write down together what happened, what did you do? Now let's write down what could have you done? What could have been different? What may have been a better decision? And I have found that that has been so helpful to them. But as an adult, it's been helpful to me as well. So as they learn, I continue to learn as well. And I see when we hear from other parents at the schools, when we hear from other teachers at the school, that they're making better choices during certain situations, that we're on the right track to keeping them mentally well. But I have no problem talking to my kids and asking them, what is it that I can do better as a father? A lot of time we think we have all the answers. We think our way is the right way. We think, you know, I'm the parent, you're the child, you know, you just do what I tell you to do. And basically, we all have this history of what we brought from our own parents. And we, you know, a lot of people say, I'm never going to be like my parents. And you turn into your parents because that's all you focus on. I'm never going to be like them. So, you know, what you think about, you bring about. So you think about, I'm never going to be like them, but you end up being just like them. So I wanted to bring something just a little bit different to ask my kids, because they have a different view of me than I do. They have a complete different view. And I want to see, how do they see me? And how can I help them to see me in a better light? How can I have an opportunity to teach them that they can talk to me, they can talk to their mother, even in their most difficult times. And we definitely display affection in the home. I hug my kids, I kiss my kids on the forehead or the cheek, and I let them know that, listen, I love you and I'm proud of you. So my thing is for mental wellness that I did as a person for myself is a lot of self-reflection, because just a lot of self-reflection, because I had anger issues as a young boy, a lot of anger issues, but sports, in particular football, helped me to, you know, get out some of those things as a young boy. But I see some of my boys going through it now that the testosterone is starting to kick in. These impulses are starting to kick in. So how can we have dialogue about that and do it in a constructive way where they feel that home is a nice, safe, open space that they can talk about what they're going through? It doesn't always work out picture perfect, and I'm fine with that. But my whole thing is, can we get around to it where we're talking about meditation? For me, when it comes to mental wellness, I practice meditation, I practice yoga, and that's my moment to just be able to just center myself, to breathe, to just let everything go, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 30 minutes, and to just recenter myself so that when I'm faced with a situation in life, I'm not reacting to it, I'm responding to it. I'm not just reacting from those emotions I'm feeling at that particular time, taking some time to respond to it. And that's what we do as a family to try to pass on to our kids. But it's huge for me as a Black father, it's huge for me that my kids grow up to be mentally well, but to be respectful and to treat other people well, to be kind. Because I would ask them, like, if they do something that I disapprove of, you know, why did you do it? How would you feel if someone did that to you? Now they have the opportunity to look within themselves to go, wow, how would I feel if someone called me a name? How would I feel if someone picked on me all the time at school? How would I feel? You wouldn't feel very good. So we have these conversations of, we're not going to jump on the bandwagon that if other people are doing things at school that are not nice, you're going to join in just to be part of the group. No, you need to do just the opposite. You need to find someone, an adult at the school, that can put an end to it, or you need to just help the other person just walk away and let them know you're there for them and you'll be a friend for them. I mean, this kindness and compassion, we have an opportunity as human beings to do something so incredible for other people. And we just simply do not get it most of the time. So now we have these young people in our household that we call children. We need to be able to flip the script and go, here's what we're gonna do to help you get it right, to help you even do better than I did. To practice that each and every day. And one thing that I enjoy personally, I like taking responsibility. I don't like blaming anybody else, but I like going out coaching basketball for little kids. And most of them can't shoot. Most of them can't dribble. None of them probably gonna be Michael Jordan. But when you teach them something and they get better at it, and you see their self-esteem go, you see how they feel good about themselves. And when people usually feel good about themselves, usually they treat other people well. When they genuinely feel good about themselves, I'm not talking about a facade. When they usually feel good about themselves, They usually treat other people with kindness and compassion. And this is something that can be passed on for free. I mean, this can be passed on for free. So these are the things that when I look at, it's like, what can I do to contribute? We helped our son get to a certain point in life. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I just wanted to make sure that he was well. I wanted to be done with autism because it is a painful, painful journey. But I started to understand the power of the story, of just sharing. You don't have to be a medical expert, but just to share, let people know they're not alone, show them kindness, compassion. You have an opportunity not only to change your life, but you have an opportunity to change the lives of others. Thank you.
Very incredible. I heard from your fellow Southerner right here, I heard some very practical ways. But my biggest takeaway from this, not trying to speak for everyone else, my biggest takeaway is the things that are happening in our homes and opportunities to how we get to affect things very positively and very impactfully at that starting point. So lots of meat there, my friend, lots of stuff to take away. Thank you so much for sharing that. Get that book, Autism to Awesome by Carrie Brooks. I'm sure it's going to bless you. Can't think of a better person to wrap us up today than Dr. Anthony Young. He always has incredible insight and words that always move us forward in whatever situations we're in. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Anthony Young.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be with you. I would like to thank Another Life Foundation for having me back as a guest. I would like to share with you just a few reflections. Can you hear me okay? Fantastic. Okay, first, before I forget, let me announce that the Association of Life Psychologists, that's the Denver Rocky Mountain Association of Life Psychologists, is having our last day for the Mental Health Stigma Survey. This is the last day to complete it. I did put the link for the survey in the chat. We're interested in learning the type of stigmas that Black people have that keep us from seeking the help that we need when we need it. So please, if you would, share the survey with others, take it yourself. It'll take about maybe 20 minutes and you'll receive a $10 Visa gift card for your time. So I just wanted to get that off before I began. So thank you very much for that time. Let me begin by sharing with you that my challenges in the area of mental health goes back to my childhood. I grew up in Chicago on the South Side. I'm the youngest of 3 sons raised by a single parent. And for those of you who know anything about Chicago, know that it's a very dangerous place. It doesn't matter what age you are, but particularly if you happen to be a Black male teenager. So when I was growing up in Chicago during the 50s and 60s and early 70s, it was particularly challenging because we would find ourselves being attacked by gang members who wanted to recruit. We had the ongoing issue with police brutality, and just the whole environment itself was just very hard to deal with. But my mother was very clear with my brothers and I. She said, family is the only gang that you will ever belong to. And we took it serious. She was about 5'1", and I saw her snatch my brothers, who are 6'5" and 6'6", down by the collar and jack them up a few times. So I knew that she was quite serious about not getting involved with gangs. So going back and forth to school, I had the issues of being harassed by gang members. I never joined a gang. My mother taught us better than that. But it was just the environment. I saw people shot, cut, and I was really traumatized. I had no idea of what trauma I had experienced until I left Chicago and looked back upon that. And it was like, oh my God, you made it through that. But I was not the only one. There were other friends who were able to get out of that environment and actually move on to have productive lives. But there's one story that I would like to share with you. And this really talks about critical thinking skills, because when I was growing up, you really have to be quick on your feet, because if you weren't, you were going to be a victim. So I remember I was 17 years old, and a good friend of mine would like to go out to dances. There was a dance hall on the south side, not too far from where we lived, but we had to take a bus there. So he and I decided that we were going to go to this place called Times Square. It was a union hall that allowed people to rent it in the evening on Friday and Saturdays. So that's when the dances were. And these were huge dances. People usually went there and had a good time, but after the dance, it was always a fight. The gang members would come across State Street to one block over to a street called Wabash, and they would just pick people to beat up and to kill after the dance was over. So my friend and I, we decided that we were going to go to the dance on a particular Friday in the evening. And we had to take a bus there about 25 blocks or so. So anyway, we had learned that some of the gang members from the Robert Taylor housing project was going to be there after the dance, and they were going to do what they usually do. So we decided that we were going to leave about 30 minutes early. We were convinced that we were dancers, not lovers, not fighters, excuse me. We were dancers, not fighters. We were going to avoid the gang situation altogether that evening. So we left about 30 minutes early, and we had to walk from Wabash to State Street. And when we got halfway down the block, we looked up, and there was a gang of guys coming at us. And they were chanting their gang chant. It was Maniac Dukes. That was one of the segments of the Black Star Rangers. And they were walking towards us chanting. And my buddy said, look, let's run. And they were too close to us. If we had ran, we would have ran right back into their territory. And also, we would have been going in the opposite direction of our bus. So I told my friend, look, do what I do. And I started chanting and clapping. Maniac Dukes. Hey, that's the same thing that the guys coming to us were chanting. And, so I was smiling and chanting, and we walked all the way through them without being stopped. I guess they thought that we were one of them. But we got to the bus stop, and just as we got to the bus stop, a bus was pulling up. And the bus driver, who was Black, looked at our faces. We were in terror. The guy just said, just have a seat in the back. And so we didn't even pay for bus fare, but that lesson taught me something about being able to really evaluate a situation quickly, because in that split second, if we had made a wrong move, we would have both been dead, without a doubt, because that was so common in Chicago during that period. And of course, those of you who know anything about Chicago know that it's not improved since then. For the most part, there's still a lot of killings, but that's what I grew up in. So I was traumatized. I decided actually in 8th grade to become a psychiatrist. I knew that psychiatrists help people to solve problems, and I had a whole bunch of my own. And I figured if I could solve my own issues, I might be worthy to help someone else. But then I realized in my research about what psychiatrists actually do is that they're actually physicians who study psychology. And I had seen enough blood growing up. I did not want anything to do with medicine. So I figured out, no, I need to become a psychologist, not a psychiatrist. So at that point, I really began to refocus on psychology. I might also mention that when I was in 6th grade, I'm going back a little bit further, I had a chance to actually spend some time at the school library, and I came across the biography of George Washington Carver. And that gave me a tremendous amount of inspiration, because here I was growing up in the public housing project is extremely poor in a violent environment. I saw that George Washington Carver had been able to overcome all kinds of obstacles I could not even imagine. And I figured, well, if he could do that, I might be able to overcome some of the obstacles I was being faced with in Chicago. And through that experience of reading his biography, I actually got inspired about reading more biographies about Black folk who have been able to overcome the odds, because as a people, we have a history of beating the odds against the odds once we realize that that's in us anyway. We have always been able to do that. These last 500 plus years in the Western Hemisphere has taught us once again, that we're able to endure because we are a resilient people. So at a young age, I began to understand that if I studied our history and culture, I could actually draw strength from that, because there are so many people who look like us who've been able to overcome all kinds of obstacles, that I could actually use that as a source of strength. So as a young person, I had to begin to identify very intentionally, where can I draw strength from? Certainly from my mom, being a single parent and watching her model, speaking to some of my teachers who were, for the most part, all Black in elementary school and high school, and really just understanding that throughout our history, we have a wonderful legacy of being able to overcome obstacles. So being able to understand that allowed me to see that there was nothing that could be done that could keep me from what I wanted to do. If I really wanted to achieve something, that I could. So throughout my education, I sought to become a mental health professional. And I might mention I'm the president of the Denver Rocky Mountain Association of Black Psychologists, and the past national president of the Association of Black Psychologists. And I share that with you because when I was growing up in Chicago, in my high school, the idea that counselors had about us is that we would never go to college, that we could never make it in college because we should just be laborers. So when I was in my senior year, I went to my high school counselor, who was an African-American woman, and asked her for a letter of recommendation so I could go to college. And she looked at me and said, "Tony, you'll never make it in college. You should be shining shoes or working in the factory." Now, I might say that in high school, I was not a stellar student. I was a D- student. In elementary school, I was an A student. High school, D- student, because I worked from 5:30 in the evening till 2 o'clock in the morning at the post office downtown loading a mail truck. So I couldn't stay awake, but my teacher and counselors thought I was on drugs, when really I was just trying to make it. So anyway, I left the office and went to the office of another counselor, and he wrote me a letter of recommendation that said something like this: "If you admit Tony into your college, you might do okay." That was it. That was my letter of recommendation for college. I went to college, took all of the psychology classes that I could. I finished my bachelor's degree in 3 years, my master's in 1 year, and my doctorate in 4 years. After I finished my master's, I went back to my old high school and showed my master's degree to my high school counselor, who told me I should be shining shoes or working in the factory. And I told her that I hope you're not giving people the same bad advice that you gave me. She only had a bachelor's degree, by the way. Anyway, I share all that with you, that too oftentimes when we're coming up, people can say things to us to discourage us. And being able to have a firm understanding, respect, and appreciation of our personal family histories, knowing that there were people who beat the odds against the odds, but also as a people, being able to understand that we can always draw strength from knowing that we are standing on the shoulders of those who came before us. And because they were able to survive, that shows that we are of good stock, if you will. We are of strong people, because we're living proof that our people can overcome any obstacle, given what we've gone through these last 500 years. So being able to be very intentional about studying and understanding who and what we are is so important to our mental wellness. Too oftentimes in our educational experience, it's downplayed the history of Black folks, if it's talked about at all. I challenge you to really rethink that, because we know that the reason why Black history is not taught in our school is not just because you have white people who would be teaching it who don't understand us, may not even like us, but the fact that they don't know it either. And they also realize that if we understand who and what we came from, that we would draw strength from that. And so our children need to know that as well as we do. So going back to the issue of mental wellness, it's very important that we understand that oftentimes Black men don't talk about our emotions a lot because we've not been taught how to talk about our emotions. When I was growing up, it was something that it was not a subject. We would talk about baseball before we would talk about our emotions and other type of issues. But really, a lot of boys mislabel their emotions when they're angry. Oh no, pardon me. When they're sad, they'll say that they're angry, because we know that anger and depression are oftentimes two sides of the same coin. People who are angry may have some sadness and vice versa. So being able to really get our children, both the boys and the girls, and ourselves to be able to understand what emotional literacy means. That means really being able to correctly identify your own emotional state for yourself. If we're able to properly label our emotions, if you name it, you can tame it. If you can't name it correctly, you cannot tame your emotions. And we find ourselves miscommunicating with other people who could help us, but they can't because we're not communicating with them what our emotional state actually is. The second issue deals with emotional integrity. That's the ability to be able to correctly and honestly convey your emotions to someone else. And that's the part that oftentimes we lack. We keep things within, we stuff. We've been socialized to believe that men don't cry, men are A, B, C, and D. And yet, we have the full range of emotions that every other human being have, including women. You know, all of us have like 360 degrees of emotions that we're able to experience, but we're socialized as men, particularly Black men, not to show weakness, because we do know that there are predators within our community, both gang and otherwise, who will take advantage of us if we do show weakness, but yet, as a people, it's something that we have to overcome. According to the former Surgeon General of the United States, Dr. David Satcher, in his 1999 report on mental health, culture, and race, that was the first report done by a Surgeon General in the country. He talked about the fact that of all of the ethnic groups, it's Black men who are least likely to seek help. As a people, we're less likely to seek help until we're in a crisis mode. And then even Black men are even less likely to seek help, even with that. When we find ourselves getting help, usually we show up in the emergency room or we're in a crisis type of situation. So being able to correctly identify our emotions for ourselves, honestly, and to be able to convey that to someone else is so important that we're able to do that so that we don't find ourselves having meltdowns. We're able to actually regulate our emotions and really cope with them in such a way that is healthy for us as well as those people who are around us. I might mention that growing up in Chicago, no one on the south side of Chicago ever had a psychotic break. No one, not one person. They had nervous breakdowns. See, we use a whole different language to talk about our mental condition. So Uncle Joe would go away for 6 months or 5 years, and people would ask, well, what happened to Uncle Joe? It would be told that, oh, he just had to go away. He went actually to a state hospital for inpatient psychiatric care, but because of the shame and then the guilt around families having to deal with the fact that there's a family member who has mental illness, that we just use a whole different language, and the stigma, and going back to that, the stigma attached to mental illness in our community really hinders us from getting the help that we need. So as Mel Greer said earlier, the stigma is a major problem in our community. We have to be able to identify it and overcome it. Once again, if you name it, you can tame it, but we have to be willing to speak honestly and with integrity to each other about our condition and those people in our family and within our community. Moving on, let me say that when we think about mental wellness, we have to be very mindful about what we ingest. You've heard the old saying that you are what you eat, right? If you are what you eat, and some people eat garbage, they're full of what? Okay, yes, you get it. Okay, if you are what you eat, some people are full of blank. Okay, so we also have to be very intentional about not only what we ingest physically, but also what we feed our mind, body, and soul. We have to pay very attention to the type of environment that we place ourselves in, as well as what are we exposing ourselves to intentionally by the media. We know there's a lot of negativity in the news about Black folk. There's a lot of negativity in the music. We have to be able to exercise the power to just simply click that off rather than to ingest it. So once again, the whole idea is that we have to be very intentional about what we ingest mentally, physically, and spiritually. And lastly, I would like to mention that as human beings, in our lifetime, we will experience some type of trauma. It's just natural on some level. It could be a severe trauma, it could be minor, but we all experience trauma to some extent or another, or we experience trauma vicariously by being in the environment where someone is being harmed in a very, very deadly type of way. But as African Americans, we have to be mindful of what Richard Pryor said. By no means was he a mental health professional, but he said a lot that addressed our mental health, our mental wellness. I remember one of his stand-up acts where he said, you know, it's really hard being a human being. We have to deal with the stress, the depression, the anger, the hostilities, and the environment. It's just really tough being human. And being Black, we have to also deal with racism on top of that. So we have that issue as an additional layer of our existence on a day-by-day basis. So not only do we have to deal with the trauma issue, but also racial trauma and intergenerational trauma. We have all three layers that we have to cope with, and we have to understand it. And even though a lot of us tend to ignore it or deny it, it does not go away because we don't talk about it. Like every other issue in our mental wellness, we have to be willing to get to a place where we can be willing to express what's going on with us in a healthy way and learn additional skills for coping. The Denver Rocky Mountain Association of Black Psychologists has emotional emancipation circles that we conduct on a weekly basis. They're free. They're to help us overcome the lie of white supremacy and the lie of Black inferiority. And we know that those two lies are at the core of a lot of our depression as a people. So being able to proactively address these issues in a safe environment is something that we do online with Zoom. If you go to our website, you'll see the link for that. And once again, I only mention this because having to deal with racism is another issue that affects our mental wellness. And unless we deal with that, and also teach our children how they can develop psychological armor and be prepared to deal with a hostile environment. Unless we do that, we're actually not properly equipping them, because once again, the racism is not going to go away just because we don't address it and don't teach our kids how to deal with it. So I'm saying that we can be proactive. We can help not just only address our overall mental wellness issues and our daily challenges, but also being able to look at the other factors which affect us in a way that we also need to be proactive about addressing. So I've covered a lot in 10 minutes. I know my time is up, but I did want to share with you that all of us have our challenges, and it's a matter of how we choose to address them. We know that we can socialize ourselves and we can change anytime we want to. That's the beauty about being human. We can always change for the better as well as for the worse. We have to be very intentional and very deliberate about how we use our energies, and honest about what we're dealing with so that others can help and so that we can also help others. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, you impact a lot. What my biggest takeaway, though, is resilience of Black people. And if that, the history of our resilience should lead us into tackling current day problems with a confidence that we can also get through whatever challenge comes to us collectively and singularly. So thank you, Dr. Young, as always, for wrapping up a great day. In conclusion, I want to thank everyone for attending the Black Men's Project. If you wish to speak to one of our mental health professionals, please contact Another Life Foundation to get referred to one. We are also having another Black Men's Project in the next few months. My hope is that we garner some real practical strategies in moving forward and how we reach our community in these times in our next time together. If we do not have your email address, please go to our website and sign up for our newsletters. Once again, our website is www.anotherlifefoundation.com. We had, at the height of our engagement today, 40 people involved with us today online. That's an incredible number of people being involved. Thank each and every one of you. Once again, to our speakers, Edric Sims, Keen Nabe, Clarence Bumpus, Kirk Woundy from NAMI, Dr. Melvin Greer, Terry Brooks, and Dr. Anthony Young. A formidable lineup today to help you and I understand the challenges that we face, not only in our community, our homes, and in our lives, to help us be the very best humans we can be. I look forward to seeing all of you again. Thanks also to not the doctor, but to Stephanie Green, president and founder of Another Life Foundation, and the board of directors of Another Life Foundation for putting on these great get-togethers. You guys have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. We'll see you soon.
Hey, Dr. Young, what's the survey, the required survey password? And Steph, are we going to be making this video available for anyone or publicly?
Okay, yes.
The password for the survey is right under the link. If you're looking at the link, right beneath it is the password is Rocky Mountain. But once again, if you go to the website, you'll see the link under the paragraph, and the password is right beneath that. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry, Stephanie, go ahead.
Yes, I will have, I'll put up the video of the conference.
And when will that be posted?
Probably on Monday.
Okay, fantastic. Okay. For those people who couldn't make it, I'll be sure to give them your link and they can check it out there.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks, guys.
Okay, you're welcome. Take care.
Okay, bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Clarence. See you later. Bye, Carrie.
Thank you.
You're welcome.